Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
All right, boys. First overseas trip, Sweden?
I'm down to visit the home of IKEA.
Evan, how down are you?
Oh, I've already priced out flights. I already priced out Airbnbs. No free ads, but, hook us up if it's possible. I am mega down.
We were talking pre-episode, and we were just like spitballing what it would cost to go, and Evan was like, what do you think it would cost? Very, very tactfully, he put it out there. What do you think it would cost? And I put out some outrageous number. And Evan's like, are you an idiot? This is what the flights cost? I'm like, no, they're not. He's like, yes, they do. I looked it up right before the episode. This is what the flight costs. This is what food will cost. This is what Airbnbs cost. We'll have to go at this time. He's already have it. You have the whole thing mapped out.
I actually do.
The greatest trick.
You just tell me, you just give me the green light and it will all be done.
I'm still angry because I found out, not the last Winged Wheel podcast night, but the one before, I found out from Catherine, your fiance, that you are a mega event, like trip planner. You are a pro. You have spreadsheets.
You do not want to see the number of tabs I have open on my computer right now to plan my bachelor party.
You're planning your own?
Well, I'm picking the where we're going to go.
Oh, okay.
And then I'm done. But I have 5 browsers open, and that does not include the number of tabs in each.
5? Who has 5 browsers?
No, I mean, they're not
windows.
all in one window. Sorry,
okay.
5 windows
Yeah.
of a browser.
The greatest trick Evan ever played on us on this podcast and the audience is that he's just like bumbling himbo who can't get out the door without tying his own shoes. And it's all out of convenience. Like, it was very intentionally done by him. And then Catherine outed you. And now I know. So if we do end up going to Sweden, it's all on you.
Oh, well, the trip's already planned, so it's all good.
What am I saying?
Like I said, you give me the green light. The itinerary will be in your inbox first thing in the morning.
What do you want to bet when he moved in with Kat? The first time he did the dishes, he did them so poorly, she hasn't asked him to do it since.
I am the breadwinner and the homemaker at our house.
But she's substantially better looking than you, and the cat likes her more, so.
Yes, but that is a changing of events as of recently.
You're winning him over.
Very slowly, but surely. I play the long game.
Yeah, as we've learned.
Yeah.
It's psychological warfare. It's not so much that the cat's warming up to him. He's turning the cat on Catherine.
Cat versus cat.
He knows I'm going to be paying for the vet bills and all his food and all that. So really, it's a choice of survival.
All right, folks. Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey. Our Red Wings season in review series continued. The world of the NHL and Evan's ongoing deception of all of us. I am one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we have the continuation of our Detroit Red Wings season in review. We already did our overall general thoughts. We've done defense, and now it is on to forwards, as well as goalies and coaching, which is going to take up the bulk of this episode. We also may have time for some news about news on Newsy, and his continued really, fun and interesting performance on the Sportsnet panel, and a little bit of drama between Jon Cooper and his thoughts on Newsy letting us know about how Andrei Vasilevsky plays in net. And we'll see what else we can get to before we take your questions before overtime. Before all that, I want to let you know Wings Money on the Board is our campaign to raise money for the Jamie Daniels Foundation. Our goal for this season is $50,000. Even though the season is over, you can still go in and make retroactive pledges or donate to our Wings Money on the Board campaign. For more information, go to wingedwheelpodcast.com/wingsmotb to find out more and how you can contribute. Also, if you want to support the show and you want to go the extra mile and you're able to, we are so eternally grateful for all of our patrons. Patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Everything that we do on this show is fueled, funded, and supported through our patrons. They are the true heartbeat of the show. You get benefits such as access to our exclusive Discord, our bonus episodes, which are a blast, and Evan often saves really good stories for those.
We kind of teased everybody with the intro on what the Patreon exclusives are like.
Yeah, we did. And you are also entered into all of our giveaways automatically. We gave away 2 tickets to every Red Wings home game this season, the vast majority of them going directly to patrons. And Patrons are what allowed us to expand into the Winged Wheel Podcast Content Network and launch the new show, Expected by Whom, hosted by Prashant Iyer and Sean Shapiro. So make sure to give them a listen and follow them on Twitter as well. Okay, Detroit Red Wings season in review. Let's get into what's probably going to be the most substantial portion so far, the forwards. The way we'll do this is we're going to probably go forward by forward, and we'll offer general thoughts as we go. And I think just a natural approach is the best way. And why don't we go in order, descending order of points performance this year? I might mess up that list because there are no rules. But the captain, Dylan Larkin, I think is the right place to start. 80 games played, which is, nearly a full season for him, which is really good to see, especially with a little bit of injury history. 32 goals, 47 assists, 79 points, very close to a point per game player. And I think this is Dylan Larkin's best season to date.
Oh, it's easily Dylan Larkin's best season to date, and he didn't even hit a point per game. Therefore, he's not a number one center. Argument over. No, in reality, it's really hard to contextualize what Larkin's doing for this team because he has such a lack of support around him. It's, we crack jokes and whine and complain and whatever you want to call it all season about this team can't score, this team can't score, this team lacks any offense, and yet Dylan Larkin's basically a point per game on this roster. It's a testament to being able to create offense, not just obviously finish the chances he does get, but he's able to generate a lot of the production himself, whether that's on the power play or even strength, because he did have a big uptick in power play goals this year, which was nice to see because that wasn't always one of his, I don't know what to call it, hallmarks.
Half his goals came on the power play.
Yeah, which, for a team that really struggled on the power play the last few years, to get some of that, the buzzword internal growth was a key.
Some good synergy.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And he did that all without losing his 200-foot game at 5-on-5. I actually find that he's, over the last couple of years, lost a step in terms of his speed. He's not lost a step, but he doesn't utilize it nearly as much as he used to.
No, he used to be a pure burner.
Yeah, I remember the stretch of games against Ottawa where he just kept burning wide and would score in a million different ways. And did he even score a goal in that fashion this year at all? It feels like very few, if any at all.
He cut toward, and this isn't a this year thing. This has happened over the last few seasons as he's become a more effective player, and that's getting to the heavy areas, the high danger areas, and cutting through defenses, which if it was easy, everyone would do it, and there wouldn't be such a thing as perimeter players. But yeah, he transitioned from being a perimeter speed guy to getting himself in the puck to that, middle trapezoid.
Well, this is a good example of, especially leading into the draft soon, about why we always beat the term hockey IQ to death, because Larkin, for the first part of his career, just kept trying to beat teams with his speed, with his skill. He's going to out-skate everybody. He's going to perform everybody. He's going to out-skill everybody. He doesn't really do that. Now he picks teams apart with his brain. He can slow the play down. He can assess what's going on. He can find the soft areas to get his goals. He can create the space for himself to get those goals, whether that's with his skating, with his passing, whatever. And when he doesn't have the puck, he's finding the right areas to get the chances. So it's super impressive for a guy with his skill set to be able to change his game so dramatically over. It's a long career, but the overarching arc isn't that long. And once he starts getting a supporting cast around him, at his age, I don't expect a substantial increase in production at this point. I mean, it would be pretty unreasonable to expect someone in their late 20s to go from an 80-point score to like 105 points or something like that. But over the next, I shouldn't say over, in the next 3 or 4 years, when hopefully some of these major holes are addressed, it's not unreasonable to think that a 31, 32-year-old Dylan Larkin still putting up similar production to what he is now, because he's got such a good overall base to work off of.
I talked a lot this year about the fact that Dylan Larkin was in a contract year, and I got some pushback on this, but in my opinion, I think in general across sports, the most likely the most likely year for a player to be performing at their absolute peak is when they're right about to enter their prime earning window, which is if you're in a contract year, you're going to be an expiring free agent with all the leverage, which is what Dylan Larkin was, then yeah, you're going to have the most motivation you'll ever have monetarily to make a difference in how you play and earn. And that's what he did. He got himself an 8-year contract at $8.7 million a year. I think that's a number that he would have been thrilled with from the start. He got paid. Dylan Larkin has 8 years. He'll be 27 over the summer, but when his contract's done, he'll be 34. That's 4 top end in terms of athletic performance, in terms of what's reasonable to expect from someone on a UFA deal. That's left for him. And, it remains to be seen how he's going to age through that contract. But the whole summary of this is, as Brad said, Dylan Larkin has his best years of performance ahead of him in my mind in terms of his holistic contribution to the Red Wings. And all that's left now is to, like you said, Brad, give him that supporting cast. This was the best culmination of availability. He stayed healthy, consistently playing his game to the utmost degree. He is one of the only players who I think over the course of the year didn't really falter or miss a step. Like almost everyone else slumped in a significant way to some degree for one reason or another. Dylan Larkin was the Red Wings MVP from start to finish. I think the only person who made that even a question for a short period of time was Ville Husso, which by the end of the year, obviously not. But Dylan Larkin was the Red Wings MVP with how he played. You talk about a guy putting all the pieces together in terms of his athletic abilities and, like Brad said, his hockey IQ. This was the best version of Dylan Larkin we've seen. And if it's an indication of what's going to happen over the next, 5 of the 8 years, then the Red Wings are in a really good spot. And to put it to rest, it's already been put to rest. It's not a question. Dylan Larkin is a first-line center, period. So this has to be one of the best stories of the year for the Red Wings. It was just oft overshadowed by, the contract negotiations.
Yeah, I think really the only thing I'll add to this is we've also continued to see strong growth of Dylan Larkin as a captain. He's captained this team through some horrendous years, and we can attest to how bad they've been. But this year he continues to lead the way, showing his maturity, standing up for his teammates and not only himself when the punk test gets applied, except for Ottawa. I think that's one of the strong areas of growth he had as well, not only his counting stats and the way he sort of evolved his game.
You're completely right. And something I'll extend further is, the topic of what the Red Wings have said since the season ended and what, we've heard from the organization is that they really, really, really want more from their young guys, especially next season. They want them to improve over the offseason. They want to instill that Red Wings culture of old and generate a new generation of players who have the skill set and they think that they can do more. And it's not just Raymond, and it's not just Seider, even though Seider I think is already pretty much there. It's, the Velenos. They want that from Berggren. They want that from guys coming up through the minor. Like they're really starting to put the squeeze on these guys, and that's what's expected. They're being paid millions of dollars. This is what you have to do. That can't always come from the coach, and that can't always come from management. And what do we know from the past however many generations of the Red Wings? Those generations aren't defined by the GM or the coaching staff, no matter how notable they are. They're defined by the leadership of the captains. We all know the kind of captain Nicholas Lidstrom was. We all know the kind of captain Henrik Zetterberg was. We all know, obviously, the kind of captain Steve Yzerman was. And there were leadership groups, and I think that's what they want from Larkin. And, yeah, I think this year he's well on his way to doing that. He has a tall task ahead of him, fostering a generation of young players into bona fide stars who can make your team cup competitive year over year isn't an easy thing to do. It takes a village in a hockey kind of way, and he's a big part of that.
I think Dylan Larkin definitely has the skill set to demonstrate what it takes to win. And I think he's got the personality and the mindset to help foster those young players as well. So it's not like he's just a superstar, shows up, gets his paycheck, and gets it back into his car and goes home. I think he's in it to win it, and I there's really no one better, I think, in the organization to sort of lead this team into the brighter years, I'll say.
So I'm going to move us down the list here to the next player, and I'm already going to put us out of order of the one I said we'd go in. I want to talk about Lucas Raymond. He had an interesting year. 17 goals, 28 assists for 45 points. It wouldn't be Lucas's best performance this season based on what he was expecting, and I think he would be the first one to tell you that. 6 fewer goals, 6 fewer assists, obviously 12 fewer points than last season. Those raw counting stats aren't the only thing that matters, but he played 8 fewer games this year. The raw numbers aren't the only thing that matter, but it wasn't always a peak season for Lucas Raymond. That said, I still think he was very good throughout the year. And in my mind, the way I'm coming away from this is I'm not concerned about him as a player of the future. I think he has a lot of work to do. And those two things are true in my head at the same time.
He needs to play with more confidence. I don't remember a lot of points this year where Lucas looked really confident with the puck on his stick, which is something we saw a lot of last year. I think the best way, or the best example of that, is for long stretches of the season, his unwillingness to shoot the puck.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty good indication of where a player's mindset is at. Not that every time he chose to pass up a shot, he didn't make a good play or a good pass, but there were so many chances to shoot, and he just wouldn't do it, especially considering he's got one of the better shots on the team. This team, that's not saying much, but still, you want Lucas Raymond shooting the puck. You want Lucas Raymond dictating play in the offensive zone, and he still did that a lot. He still worked his way around the offensive zone. Lucas Raymond is often one of the smartest players on the ice while he's out there. You can tell he sees things other players don't. You can tell he processes a lot of things at a very high level. And then his lack of confidence, I shouldn't say lack of confidence, but his, whatever was in his head was getting in the way of the final step of what he was doing. Not to say that there aren't some, physical traits he needs to work on too. He definitely needs to get a step quicker. Mm-hmm. He definitely needs to get a touch stronger. Not anything that he can't do with a good offseason. It's not like he can't skate or he can't protect the puck, but there's definitely room for improvement there. So
he's 20 years old. This is when these changes have to happen in his body.
Yeah, exactly. So, one good offseason and we're coming back and we're looking at a completely different player and, he's putting up 60, 70 points. I'm not concerned at all. Lucas's ceiling is still extremely high. He's still very likely to get very close to that ceiling. So the nice thing for him is everything that he needs to work on is very fixable, or the improvements can be minimal.
I really wanted to zero in my opinion, on the things that you said he has to do in the offseason. You have to get stronger. Teams had a game plan against him the same way they had one against Berggren and anyone smaller in general, but they really game planned against Lucas, which was cutting down on his time, which started really in the latter half of his rookie season. And every finish of a check, every elbow, every grind along the boards, they took that on Raymond. And that is the right game plan against it. You said it last episode, Evan. That's welcome to the show. Like, that is part of the game. He needs to get stronger to be able to bounce off those. He needs to get a step quicker to, like you said, Brad, find that space and give himself the ability to either hammer through the dirty areas or get a step quicker to find space a little bit more readily. That strength will also translate into, a more confident shot. Get some more juice behind that thing. It is a wicked shot. His release is fantastic. The way he's able to read and execute the shot is great. Even this year, as he is, we think he didn't shoot enough. These are all things that are attainable, and they're all things that are normal for a guy his age. And I think this year would probably open his eyes a lot as to how it affects you if you're not keeping pace physically with the rest of the league. Is it the end of the world that he had a lower output than last year? No, but I think there's so much room above his head where it doesn't have to be such a disparity between, consider Seider, who he came in at the same time as. Everyone's thinking Seider's already in lockstep with star status, is moving up there, is probably going to be Detroit's best player pretty soon, if he's not already in some people's minds. Raymond doesn't have to be so far behind. There doesn't have to be that big of a gap in terms of how they're performing. I think there's a ton of room ahead of him. The fact that he was able to put up this performance in what is a, iffy year, depending on who you ask. This guy can and should be a star, and it's on him to kind of take those steps now.
Just going back to the point of talking about shooting, he had 6 less shots than Moritz Seider, and Dominik Kubalik, who is just higher than him in the counting stats department for forwards, had 40 more shots than him.
6 fewer shots than Seider is surprising.
Significant.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. The shots from Seider and Wellman at the point, like, they would generate a lot of those, but that was for a guy who's supposed to be on the first line. Raymond did lose power play time to, Perron and signings who came in, but
David Perron had 60 more shots.
Yeah, 195 shots. Larkin led the team.
6-0, yeah.
Oh, my God. Yeah, that's a pretty good indication of a big area of improvement.
And David Perron's shooting percentage was only 0.4% lower than Lucas Raymond.
Yeah.
So numbers don't lie.
And that comes from utilization, but, good shooting will beget better utilization. In general, I think this is going to sound like a beating down on Raymond's season. He was still good. I think at the high points of his year, we were watching him. We were like, yeah, that's Lucas Raymond right there. The streakiness was was the red flag for me, where I was like, he has a lot of work to do, and it's not just going to come to him as naturally as it might have through his developmental years and in his rookie season.
It's everything you guys mentioned all culminates into consistency.
Yeah.
If he can find consistency, which is the most difficult thing to do at the NHL level, it seems, I think he'll have a fantastic follow-up season. 100%. It's a sophomore slump for sure, and I don't even think it was honestly all that bad.
No. I will say I think the organization is really looking for him to put in that work.
I'm sure he is as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So 45 points. Is it a bad year? No, but I think there's no reason why Lucas Raymond in the future, if not near future, could be a perennial 70, 80 point guy.
I'd rather him have 45 points now than when the Red Wings are battling for home ice advantage in the playoffs.
100%. And that's the advantage of getting these guys in young. He cracked the roster so quickly. He's 20 years old.
Yeah,
he's got
tons of time.
Tons of time. His contract extension is eligible as of July 1. That's going to be an interesting one to watch, because after the year he had, is he going to want to sign an extension as soon as possible? If he's going to sign one as soon as possible, he'll probably want a bridge. The Red Wings will want to lock him up for as long as possible while his value is lower. I'm not sure that we're going to see a Lucas Raymond signing right away or what it looks like, because
here we go again.
He's an RFA at the end of this, at least. There's no risk of losing him at the end of this season.
And to spell it out for folks, he has 1 year left on his entry-level contract. So he's just eligible for the extension beyond that as of July 1st. So just wanted to put that out there. The leverage is definitely all in the team's hand on this one, but Lucas doesn't have to sign anything because he has that extra year left. So, wants to bet on himself, this is how you do it.
It's paid off for literally everyone else lately in sports.
Essentially. Anyone who bets on themselves, it pays off, and any GM who signs a potential star player as early as possible for as long as possible, it pays off for them. So
yeah,
tell that to Jon Klingberg.
Well, I think about it a lot. Like the Jon Klingberg's agent, who he had anywhere from like a $57 to $64 million contract on this table,
offer from Dallas, and he chose not to take it because
what the hell's wrong with you? What the hell is wrong?
Well, he fired that agent.
Yeah,
so he got some guidance there. That wasn't great. That one, I don't cry for millionaires. I don't cry for billionaires. But
come on.
That one's like that. It's a little tough to watch as he goes year to year now on his contracts, and no one's giving Jon Klingberg 8x7 anymore.
No.
All right, David Perron in that signing, 2 years at $4.75 million before this year, and I don't think we could have imagined it would have gone as well as it did. Second on the team in points, 24 goals, 32 assists, a revelation on the power play. A veteran presence, loved in the room and by the fans, gets in every scrum to defend his players. It's easy to see why David Perron has been loved everywhere he's been and why St. Louis is so fond of the guy. What a season from him. 34 years old.
Yeah, he's still a baby.
Yeah. There's hope for you yet, Brad.
Yeah, he's out there cruising around with his white skates and his tinted visor. He's everything every beer leaguer has ever wanted to be.
Yeah.
He can't skate. Doesn't matter. still gets out there and just rips. He is every beer leaguer's hero. But on a serious note, it is fun and funny watching Perron play hockey because, I was being, a little facetious, but in reality, his skating is awful. He does not get quickly anytime. He really struggles to get around the ice at NHL pace. But I have never seen a player protect the puck like Perron can.
He has so much poise with it too.
He has the ultimate patience. He can be on his forehand, backhand, literally reaching out with one hand on the stick, fending off a defender, and he has perfect control, perfect presence of mind to still be able to read what's going on, and when he's able to make the play that he's trying to. It is absolutely unreal to watch because, especially for a smaller player like myself, like I could never imagine doing what he's doing, and he's not that big. And, he can protect the puck. He makes the right play, and he can still find ways to get himself open to let his shot go. It's such a treat to watch him because it's been a long, long time since the Red Wings. Well, not long time, but the last Red Wing I remember to even be able to do that to that degree was Zetterberg.
Yeah.
And obviously Perron is not Zetterberg, don't get me wrong, but it was an element, especially off the cycle, that the Red Wings had been sorely lacking since Zetterberg's retirement. And you bring a guy like Perron in to have a similar effect on the team that Zetterberg did, that obviously the skill set on the ice, but be a bit more of a veteran leader off the ice. He's got his Cup ring. He's been around the block a few times. He can help out the Lucas Raymonds of the world. And you hope that the on-ice production doesn't dip because, it's hard to be a veteran leader if you're putting up like 19 points every year. Like, how many young offensive stars are going to listen to you at that point?
Darren Helm would like a word.
That's right.
That's for you, all you Helm stands out there. A little breadcrumb for you.
Yeah, there we go. And so I think Perron did exactly everything the Red Wings brought him in to do.
The puck on his stick on the sidewall on the power play was... It sounds ridiculous, but there's a few players in the league, and it's been a while since the Red Wings have had one, where every time they were in a certain situation, you're like, he's going to do something. And it got to that point where the puck would be on Perron's stick on the sidewall in the power play, and I'm like, he's going to outweight, have the slightest little head, body, stick fake, or do nothing at all and just freeze people and find someone cross crease across like 18 legs. And that's what he did. Like, how many goals for Raymond, Chiasson, Berggren, whatever, Larkin on the opposite side of the net came from Perron's pass that came through, or he was the one who found Seider at the point and that shot got through. Like, it's no wonder why Raymond lost power play time. It's no wonder why Perron was just such a staple for that position on that half wall. Like, you said it, Evan, the poise. Like, it almost gives you tingles to watch it. Like,
plays a veteran's game, that's for sure.
And it ages well. But you're not wrong, Brad. He's not out there. He's not Dylan Larkin, Andreas Athanasiou, Darren Helm out there. There's two breadcrumbs. But the way he plays the game means that as he gets past his athletic prime, he's coming in and making an impact on a team that, made some noise for a hot second there at a wild card spot. The Red Wings are going to get calls for Perron at the trade deadline this upcoming season, and I would not be surprised if the Red Wings don't even pick up the phone.
I mean, hoping we're in a playoff spot at that point,
right,
Ryan.
Like,
I'm hoping.
It really depends on how the team's performing, but this is a guy where you forego the barely sufficient standard of pick. Like, say someone offers a third and a middling prospect, you don't take that, right? For Perron, the impact that he has on the team is more substantial. Great, fantastic signing, and you can tell the difference he made on the team this year.
Maybe St. Louis will figure it out and be making a playoff push and come calling for David Perron.
They do have more than one first-round pick. Yeah, they might want him. But no, Perron has been...
excellent signing, and he had a great season.
Yeah. Just a great move to pick him up in the offseason. I didn't think it could go this well, and here we are. Let's talk about the another big signing that happened in the offseason. Andrew Copp, and his deal is obviously a significant one, signed at $5.625 for 5 years. The Red Wings brought in someone who is meant to be their de facto second-line center behind Larkin. Came in off core surgery, no preseason time, essentially had to shake off the rust and get up to speed right away. And his year, it slowly ramped up in my mind. he ended up finishing with pretty respectable numbers, 9 goals, 33 assists for 42 points. A little ways off his best performance of 53 points, which I think he's done a couple times, but it finished a lot stronger than it started, and the concern I had for Copp at the start of the year without knowing the extent of the core surgery is way less now. But there's still some room for discussion on this one.
Yeah, because the problem with talking about Andrew Copp is all the context around it. Did Andrew Copp have a good season? Yeah, absolutely, especially coming off core surgery. Once he got going, you could really see why the Red Wings wanted him, why the Red Wings went out and got him, and all the skills and talent he brings to the team. And it's not his fault, so you obviously can't fault Andrew Copp for it, but I don't think the season lived up to what his contract is, and given his age, it does present some concerns going forward. Obviously, a very healthy offseason is a big reason for optimism. Is he a second-line center in the NHL? No.
Not on average, no.
No.
By the way, he's 28. He'll turn 29 in July.
But the Red Wings don't have a better option than him right now, so he is the second-line center. And obviously, he's still a huge upgrade from Pius Suter, who did it last year.
Yeah.
So you got to at least be happy with any upgrade you can get, because, if I take the contract out of it, if I take the expectations to play much higher in the lineup than he should, he had a good year. He was a big upgrade on what was at his role, who was occupying his role last year, with all due respect to Pius Suter. Sorry. But
I'll remember that one. But
yeah. But, he didn't even crack 10 goals and, was 10 points shy of his career high coming off his big contract. So I really, really like Andrew Copp, the player. It's just he still has to find another gear, whatever that might be, whether that gear could just be full health. Mm-hmm. Like, it could literally be just that. But you don't pay someone almost $6 million a year for 4 more years to maybe be a half a point per game and play, on your third line or a wing spot when the Wings are trying to compete.
He's another guy I think would probably say his season wasn't good enough. And you know what? I would mostly agree with that statement. But like you guys said, it was kind of a tale of two stories this year. Very slow start. I mean, he still played all 82 games, but clearly the no training camp coming off of core surgery really hampered him at the start of the season. Later in the season, obviously looked a lot better. His compete was a lot better, and the points started to come. So, like you guys said, I think the most important thing for him is to have a healthy offseason, and I feel like next season will be better than this one.
Yeah, I think what you guys have outlined is completely fair. My optimism is based on the trend we saw towards the second half of the year. And what the Red Wings need Copp to be now is to continue to be a serviceable, which isn't a high bar to set, a serviceable second-line center. If you are not among the top 32 second-line centers in the league, that's okay, but you can't be too much further off that. A serviceable second-line center until more comes through, until Kasper is ready, until the Red Wings, Bedard or Fantilli, because I'm going to live on cloud 9 for a moment here.
Don't even say that.
I know. I shouldn't put that out into the world.
You're going to be that Dewey meme from Malcolm in the Middle soon, or I'm going to be. I expect nothing, and I'm still disappointed because you keep speaking it.
Brad, that's been the show for the past 8.5 years.
I know, and I keep telling you to stop, but you don't.
Can't wait till we do the draft lottery live stream and the Red Wings are at 9 and none of us say a damn thing for 10 seconds. I can't wait.
Because he's the one always trying to speak this into existence. If that number 9 or 10 card flips over and the Red Wings logo comes up, do we just get up and leave and make him do the rest of the stream by himself?
He can't stop us.
No, I can't. Nor would I try to. I don't fight fathers. They have dad strength and they have too much to live for.
Yeah, that's right.
See, because me and Evan are in the no-lose situation here. We expect nothing. So if we get nothing, we're right, and we just move on with our lives. If we're wrong, we have to admit we're wrong and you're right, but there's a Connor Bedard or Adam Fantilli that comes with that.
You'll never see me again.
No. Anyhow, They just need Copp to fill that role and transition to a middle six winger if and when the team is ready. Very obviously, the team needs more to come in via draft, via trade, however it might be, to get like a true top six center. Copp isn't that, or he hasn't been, but he can be serviceable. He can be a very serviceable plug-in to the point where it's not so much like you said, Brad, we're asking Pius Suter to be someone he's not. We're asking, Darren Helm or Luke Glendening or whoever to be someone that they're not. Like, he should be able to fit that bill, and the onus is on him next season to do it. All right, very quick break here, and on the other side, we'll get into some more of the interesting stories, including Michael Rasmussen, Jonatan Berggren, and lots more. This episode is brought to you by Manscaped.com, the global men's lifestyle brand that's disrupting the beard market. Hockey and beards are synonymous, and if you followed us for a while, you know that Evan and I take great pride in our beards while Brad does his best Crosby impression. Now, finally, Manscaped is launching a beard trimming and styling routine. Now, what I have here is the Beard Hedger Pro Kit. Your facial hair really sets the tone for the entire postseason, whether you're contending for the cup or sticking it to your old school GM. The Beard Hedger trimmer has a powerful 7,200 RPM motor and titanium-coated T-blade that can cut through the thickest of hair in a single stroke. Whether you prefer a 5 o'clock shadow or a lion's mane, you can choose from 20 different hair cutting lengths with the zoom wheel that only uses one guard. The beard trimmer is waterproof, cordless, and rechargeable, so you can trim in the shower to save time and create less mess. Manscaped also created dermatologist-tested beard care products to help you grow and nourish a magnificent beard. The Beard Hedger Pro Kit includes the Beard Hedger, beard shampoo, beard conditioner, beard oil, beard balm, the travel case, and a free gift. To get all that and more, simply go to manscaped.com today and get 20% off plus free shipping when you use promo code WWP at checkout. That's 20% off plus free international shipping with promo code WWP at manscaped.com. Join over 8 million men worldwide, including us three, who trust Manscaped today. Okay, let's continue in my totally out of order here. I want to talk about the season Michael Rasmussen had. 56 games, got cut short as he had that kneecap injury. Unfortunately, 10 goals, 19 assists, 29 points. And outside of the counting stats, I think this is the biggest kind of impact in the room, impact on the spirit, the vibe of the Red Wings that he's ever had. And this is a Michael Rasmussen that we have wanted to see for some time. When it became apparent he wasn't going to be that skilled player to dance through everyone and put up insane numbers, we wanted a guy who could, muscle through you, be a big, imposing physical force, utilize his crazy eyes for good, and dominate on the ice. And I think there's no better indication of the fact that Michael Rasmussen did that by how different and almost like despondent the Red Wings looked after he got injured.
Yeah, I don't even know how to phrase this, because I feel like Red Wings media fans are turning Michael Rasmussen into something he isn't, but they have his level of importance accurate. I don't think Michael Rasmussen's counting stats are going to evolve much beyond what they are now, because what he is offensively is what he has been for the last year and a half that we saw. He's not a creative player, but he's good enough and smart enough and talented enough to make the simple, correct plays in the offensive zone, and he's got enough drive and, size, speed, whatever, to make it happen.
Yeah, I think half point per game is reasonable.
Yeah, and I think that's about where he's probably going to settle for most of his career. And like most players, he'll probably have one or two outlier years where things just, fall for him. The shooting percentage is a little higher. Maybe he's got some better line mates and he gets around that 50-ish point mark. But that's not going to be regular. And when I see the discourse on him, they're like, oh, he's going to be a top six, play driving. No, that's not what he is. But he is just as important because he is one of the most reliable 200-foot players for the Red Wings. He is extremely versatile, which is rare for a guy his size to be able to play all three of the forward positions effectively. We've talked about how he's way better on the wing, but he can fill in at center adequately. It's just not the best way to maximize his strengths. Yeah. But in terms of a team context, when you are down a center or two or injuries and you have a guy like him who you can just pull off the wing and plug and play and you're not going to be screwed, that's hugely important. The Red Wings penalty kill was way better with Michael Rasmussen. The Red Wings in their D zone is way better than Michael Rasmussen. Again, I don't expect this huge leap from him at this point, but you almost couldn't carve out of stone a better third-line player if you want to be a cup contender than what the Red Wings are getting out of Rasmussen right now, or before his injury, I should say.
Yeah, if you sort of take the second half of last season and combine it with this season, it's probably the best stretch of hockey Michael Rasmussen has played at the NHL level.
I wouldn't even say best. It's the only good stretch of hockey he's put together at the NHL level, but at least we're lucky in the sense that it's been really good.
Yeah, so, I hate to say it again, but it's all going to come down to consistency and health. If he can get that straightened out in the offseason, I think he'll have another fantastic season. And you guys highlighted it. Without him in the lineup, this team looked completely different. A lot of disinterest in a lot of the games. So he is a very key component of this team. It's just very hard to put your finger on why.
Credit to Derek Lalonde for what you mentioned, Brad. He's at his best on the wing, but he's shown versatility and being able to come in and play center. I think there was a bigger disparity in terms of performance level when that was tried previously. And with how they've worked with Rasmussen in his game and how they fit him into Derek Lalonde's system, it's way less of a drop-off now, in my mind. I still think he's at his best on the wing. I agree. He can crash the net, play his best hockey. He's responsible for less of the play driving, etc. But he's fit in just fine there, and it's worked. So credit to obviously Rasmussen, but also the coaching staff in Detroit.
He's actually excellent at small area hockey too for a guy his size. When he's behind the net and driving plays below the goal line, that's kind of where his bread and butter is.
Which is a huge testament to him, because 2 years ago, our biggest gripe with Michael Rasmussen was there was a stretch for almost 2 months to start the season where we're not sure if he won a board battle.
Yeah,
we're really sitting here going, you're 1,000,000 feet tall, and he got muscled off every puck. It was infuriating.
He's become a lot more tenacious with the puck and to get it back, and I think that's been a huge area of success for him.
He's just found the correct way of utilizing his frame combined with his skill set, and that's also not to ignore the fact that his skating has come a long way. He was an awful skater. I know a lot of people, look at Elmer Soderblom and go, Tage Thompson, which obviously no. But if Soderblom can kind of mirror the path in terms of development, not the up and down injury history, whatever, but figuring out how to play within his body and figuring out how to use his size with his skill set, that's what Soderblom should be watching. And I'm not saying he has to play like Rasmussen. They're two very different players. Soderblom's a far more skilled player, but just figuring out what Rasmussen figured out and having Rasmussen in that room
is good
to teach him is a huge plus.
Okay, let's get into another free agent signing that came in. Dominik Kubalik put up 20 goals, 25 assists for a very respectable 45 points. Played 81 of 82 games and was signed for 2 years, so has 1 year remaining at $2.5 million. The start to the season was electric. I was like, if he continues this is going to be the steal of the offseason. But still, putting up a 20 spot, 45 points for a guy that was signed for $2.5 million, that is a very efficient signing for Detroit. His contributions on the power play and just his releases, his shot is so good.
He's the only scoring from a distance threat on the Red Wings.
Pretty much, yeah. So thoughts on him, and we'll get into it maybe after we talk about his game. I think he's going to be a guy some teams call about next trade deadline. But yeah, he contributed and was one of the few bright spots in terms of nearly consistent, except for a bigger slump in the middle, scoring for the Red Wings.
Yeah, I mean, he's an absolute bargain. Going to be a long conversation this year about whether or not to extend him, trade him, or whatever. Can't wait till we stop having the trade players conversations. But
I think they're already slowing down. But
they're slowing down, yeah. I mean, yeah, because you couldn't have possibly asked more from him for what his contract was. It was a little front loaded, sure. And it's easy to watch Kubalik and look at his shot and kind of pigeonhole the guy because obviously he's got an electric shot. He's a good offensive player, but there was a lot of subtleties to his game that I actually really liked. He is excellent on the forecheck, which is not something that Dominik Kubalik was billed as coming in. But yeah, watching him throughout the season, even in the times where the puck wasn't dropping for him, he was always noticeable when he was the first guy in. And, he's got his deficiencies. You don't pay a guy $2.5 million and expect him to be a perfect player.
Yeah.
And, leaves a little bit to be desired in the D zone, leaves a little bit to be desired in transition. But yeah, much like Perron, he did just about everything you could have asked for him, given the circumstances of Chicago just not qualifying him and him coming into Detroit on a prove-it contract.
Yeah, Dominik Kubalik is an interesting one for me because on the one hand, I see a guy who's making $2.5 million and scores 20 goals and is over a half a point per game player. On the other hand, I don't see him out on the ice ever. I find him incredibly inconsistent in his overall game. If you when you go to a game and you're like, oh yeah, that guy. I think he was that guy for me this season. There's nights where I just forgot he existed on the team unless he scored a goal. That says stuff about me as well. Yeah. So let's not say I'm the
memory of a goldfish, but yeah,
that's right. It leaves a lot to be desired for me on that perspective, but going back to my original point, you're paying him $2.5 million and he scored 20 goals.
Yeah.
How can you totally be upset? You're not looking for a world beater with Dominik Kubalik. You're getting extreme value.
All right, Jonatan Berggren. Besides the evolution of his name, the evolution of his game. 15 goals.
I hate you so much.
Thank you. On the fly. I came up with that on the fly.
I hate you.
I thought you liked poetry.
Not yours.
15 goals, 13 assists for 28 points. Came up and stayed up with the Red Wings. Played 67 games in the winged wheel this year. He had to be a little bit patient to get his opportunity, but when he did get it, he made it stick. And in my mind, Berggren went through all the paces this year. Produced, it was easier at times. He kind of slumped a little bit as the physicality was getting to him, and opposing teams were grinding him down. He's not a big guy, and he's got a lot of growth to do in that respect because he's still very young, 22 years old. But was scoring till the end, and to put up that kind of point total in your rookie season when you came out of Grand Rapids, that's promising. I think Berggren is kind of overlooked as a potential really good impact player in Detroit's top six of the future. The onus is on him now to figure out what he's going to do this offseason as he, adjusts to the NHL game a little bit more readily, where I think the physicality won't affect him too much. But I think he really, really, really could be a big part of Detroit's top six of the future.
I think this offseason he needs to live with David Perron and just talk to him a lot, because Berggren's not a great skater. He's not a poor skater, and he's a little quicker than David Perron is, obviously, for one reason being younger. But Berggren's another guy who really likes to slow the play down, and we've talked about that at length because he's always one of the smartest players on the ice. He finds lanes and seams that other players just don't see. And it was hard for him to truly utilize that this year because he did not get a lot of playing time with a lot of gifted scorers. So you have a guy who's a top-end playmaker playing with guys who can't finish or get open. It's a bit frustrating, but Berggren did a phenomenal job of putting the puck in the net himself, way more than I would have expected this year. Because Berggren's never been, an incompetent goal scorer. It's always been part of his game, but it's never been the main part of his offensive attack, and he finished with more goals and assists this year. And I know you mentioned that he needs to get stronger and because he's on the smaller side, and that's kind of why I made the Perron comparable. Obviously, he doesn't have Perron's size, but just, pick his brain, learn to protect the puck, because Lucas Raymond has the benefit of he can kind of get out of some of those situations because he's quicker. Berggren's not going to be able to do that as often, so he really has to, utilize the little bit of space he has when he has it, and when that space runs out, how to play that. But yeah, I mean, we weren't sure Berggren was going to skate a game with the Red Wings this year, let alone play a near full season and produce while playing a bottom six role. So, from where Berggren was to start the year to what our expectations of him now, I mean, you got to come away really excited.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that. Like, considering we didn't really pencil him in on the roster, and he came in and he stayed up and was one of the more productive players on the team once he was in the lineup and playing, not a whole lot of minutes every game. How could he really be upset with the season that he had? It's only going to get more difficult now if he continues to produce, because teams start to focus on him and they'll just say he's small, you can just eliminate him. So the game is only going to get more difficult, but I think he's got the IQ and the headspace to think his way around that. Might be a guy they look to lock up long-term sooner rather than later, so that it kind of looks like a bargain later on in that contract. I don't know. But yeah, another guy, it's hard to really be upset with the season he had.
Pius Suter, unrestricted free agent right now, just finished up a $3.25 million contract. And a forward who, he didn't produce a lot for the Red Wings, 14 goals, 10 assists for 24 points, but his defensive impacts for this team were phenomenal. On the penalty kill at 5-on-5, he was just an outstanding player. Complemented that bottom six, is really, I think, a guy who, like, as filler, the Red Wings have done a lot worse as filler. And I think there's room for him on this roster to come back depending on the contract demands that he has. I don't know if he'll want more than what he got. I don't know that he could justify more in terms of if you're Steve Yzerman and the Red Wings, but if he has a good thing going here, I would not hate to see Pius Suter back at all. I know I've joked a lot about, the rise of Pius Suter and I'm his biggest champion, but genuinely, I like him in a bottom of the lineup role. I like what he does in the penalty kill. Contract aside, he's done really well.
Well, if you like Michael Rasmussen, you can't not like Pius Suter.
Yeah.
They fill the same role. Obviously to varying degrees, and their skill set isn't identical, but you have that very versatile forward who can play wing or center, is excellent defensively, and can chip in enough offense to keep you content and to bring, a different dimension to your bottom six. Suter's absolutely that guy, and every team could use 2 or 3 guys like that. The only question with Suter is, are you getting that for Michael Rasmussen's sub $2 million contract, or does he want $3.5-4 million, whatever it might be?
Yeah.
And that, more than anything else, is probably going to determine Suter's future. Because again, for a depth player who was on a show-me contract after being unqualified by Chicago, he did everything you could ask of him. He was the team's second-line center for the better part of a year before this season. So, Suter came in here and did everything the team asked of him and then some. And, he's such a likable player. You hope they bring him back. But ultimately, a guy like Pius Suter's probably only ever going to play in the bottom six, so he needs to be paid like a guy who's only ever going to play in the bottom six.
Yeah.
So, hopefully something can be done there, but I'll say I'm not optimistic on that front.
Yeah, Pius Suter is like such a nice plug-and-play type player to have in the roster. Unfortunately, teams find those everywhere. But ultimately, I think the future of Pius Suter on this team is up to him. What he wants to get paid, or thinks that there's more to his game that it would be better suited with another team, or another team offers more money. I think that's up to him to decide. Was this season amazing? No, he had 24 points in 79 games. That's not lighting the world on fire, but by any means. But he does bring a lot of those sort of intangibles, being able to move up and down the lineup, plays well defensively, plays special teams when needed, especially the penalty kill. So I don't know. It's okay.
Yeah. It's standard fare for bottom of the lineup.
We're 7th in the division. He's a bottom 6 guy. He's did okay.
Joe Veleno is a guy who, Steve Yzerman has vocally said that he wants to see more out of and thinks he can do more. Played 81 games this year, 20 points, 9 goals, 11 assists. So the production wasn't there, but I think a lot like previous years, his production kind of ramped up over time. I think we saw more consistency in his game, but is there more production to his game is the question. So your thoughts on Veleno's season?
Every year there's a player who you look at, you watch him, and you go, the stats don't match the eye test. this guy should be producing more.
Oh, so he's Filip Zadina.
Well, at points.
The Winged Wheel podcast, where we open the same can of worms every episode.
Listen, I'm just saying this forward from the 2018 draft that the Red Wings selected in the first round just isn't producing to the... Anyways.
What if we combine both of them genetically?
Somehow they would produce less.
36 points. Oof.
Wow.
Real bummer.
No, somehow it would like subtract from each other. You take.
We forgot to. That was two negative signs, not a positive and a negative. Wow, we screwed up.
Yeah.
Either way, one of them might win the Masters. So,
that's right.
But in all seriousness, Veleno, by the eye test, was very, very good this year. I really like the evolution of his game. He was one of those guys for playing down in the lineup and not scoring a lot. You noticed him, or at least I noticed him a lot. He is one of the Red Wings' best players in transition at forward in terms of, carrying the puck and all that. He's young, but he's good defensively. At least he puts in an honest effort. There's some refining that can still be done there. But again, for a guy his age, I'm not going to nail him to the wall for not being perfect there yet. His catch and release shot is phenomenal. It's actually something I can't believe he doesn't score more on. And I think that's just a product of he's not getting in the position to do it often enough yet, which hopefully comes with time. Because with Zadina, the frustration is he gets a million chances and can't score on any of them. I feel like Veleno's not creating enough chances for himself yet because he gets up and down the ice so well.
Yeah.
He can play off the cycle in both ends so well. He can, move the puck well. But then at the end of the game, you're like, oh, yeah, he had one scoring chance. Why? So this could just be an experience thing as he learns his way through the NHL, because the big talking point, at least with us, since the Red Wings have drafted Veleno and we've watched his progression from the CHL to the AHL to the NHL, even his brief stints at the World Juniors, he's always a slow starter. He doesn't get it right away. But every stop, you can see there's a point where it clicks, and then he gets it. And then he looks like a different player and the production starts to come. I don't ever expect Joe Veleno to be a 50, 60, 70-point guy. But I think there's a very real world where Joe Veleno is anchoring the Red Wings' third line, putting up 40-something points a year. The tools are there. The eye test is there. It's just now he's got to start outthinking his opponents.
All right, as these kind of whittled down here, let's talk about Elmer Soderblom very quickly. Had his stint at the start of the year, came in hot. Obviously, his pace didn't keep up to NHL speed and was sent down to Grand Rapids. A little bit of a funny year as he dealt with injuries and also consistency there. But Elmer Soderblom, from what you saw, fighting for a roster spot next year, there's a lot of competition for him.
Yeah, and patience is going to be the key word with Soderblom. I know I see the discourse, and I talked about it a bit in Rasmussen's profile about, hey, could Soderblom be Tage Thompson? To which the answer is very obviously no. But his overall career trajectory could follow very similar. Thompson didn't figure it out till he was 25. Because when you're that big and that skilled, there's a lot of things that you have to learn along the way.
Yeah.
And it's promising that Soderblom's already come as far as he has, but he still has a long way to go because he has the size. He has the skill. Past that, there's a lot he still needs to work on. And it's not that, these things that he lacks he's bad at per se. They're just not up to NHL pace. They're not up to NHL timing. He's even not up to fully NHL strength yet, although with his reach, he did have several very impressive moments of puck protection and control. Just, when you can hold the puck with one hand 14 feet away from the guy checking you, it helps. So I still have very high hopes for Soderblom, and this season only gave me more reasons for optimism, but I don't think we're going to see the fruits of that in the short term, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Elmer for me is a long-term play. We got a nice taste of it this year. There's still a long way to go for him. Pace is definitely one of the big ones for me. And that, that's okay. He doesn't need to be a barn burner right now. Like, give it some time, refine your game. But yeah, the competition in the lineup where he would be playing is very competitive. So it's going to take one heck of an offseason for him to stick from day one out of camp.
The next two here are the story of injuries, but with different levels of performance. Robby Fabbri, lucky, I think, to escape without another serious ACL tear. Obviously missed the end of the year with his knee injury, but missed a good chunk of the start of the year for the same reason. I think when Fabbri was in, it was almost kind of overlooked how well he was doing. 7 goals, 9 assists in 28 games. And for him to do that with such little time to kind of get up to speed, like he came out of the gate hot. Fresh legs, yeah, but I liked what I saw from Fabbri, but it's just about staying healthy now. And it sucks because, what do you do about your ligaments? But it's just about staying healthy, and there's not really much else to gather from him. And, we've talked about Filip Zadina ad nauseum. Start of the year, terrible. Like terrible.
Couldn't get in the lineup.
Virtually no production. Understand, like after a fantastic camp and preseason, we were like, okay, he's really starting to put it together. Awful start, but then had his broken leg, came back and did a lot better. Was doing a lot of things better than the ice. There was a little bit of production there. 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 points in 30 games, which is nothing to write home about. But in terms of whatever small victories you want to find, that was something. But
those 7 points came in about a 14 or 15 game stretch, though, for him, which was the window where you're at least ready to not give up on him.
And more importantly than that, even, I think, is the team really liked the Filip Zadina they got back from injury. They liked how he was grinding. They liked how he was working on his game. They liked what he was doing off the puck a little bit more. And that's going to pay dividends in theory. We're not going to sit here and debate for 30 more minutes on what Filip Zadina's future production could be. Might go down as the most frustrating player of the era. Could be a late bloomer. Don't know. But his only task right now is to continue his second stint of last season into this next season. And throughout the rest of the lineup, I mean, Sundqvist obviously did his part with the Red Wings, got traded. Adam Erne's UFA, I think we'll all be surprised if he comes back for anything other than like a minimum contract, if at all, with the amount of competition in the lineup. Chiasson, I can hear an argument depending on what the Red Wings forward groups look like. He was outstanding on the power play net front, but kind of a one-trick pony. So if he comes back, great. It's something, but he would be a depth chart.
Maybe he's like
best.
A PTO guy. I don't know.
And then, we all know the story with Vrana. Giovanni Smith was traded. And then and beyond that, it's, Marco Kasper's first game and Zarnik, Luff, etc. So those are the forwards. One thing I want to close off with before we jump into the goalies and the coach here. We talked about a bunch of guys, and the feedback on all of them was mostly good. Like almost universally good. Even Raymond, for example, where it sounded like it was a little bit of a not as great of a year as the numbers would suggest or as his talent would suggest. Yeah, there was still a lot of positivity in there. There's two parts of that. One side of the coin, great job to the Red Wings. I think overall they did improve on every front this year, and we're going to talk about that with Derek Lalonde. But on the flip side, those forwards didn't amount to an NHL playoff level offense. They need goals. They need high-end talent. They need skill. And did I mention that they need goals? Despite all those good things, they still need a lot more for future.
Yeah, and, we were talking about them, most of them in context of their role. Now imagine you bump all these guys down one line, which is realistically what needs to happen because the Red Wings need at least 2 first-line forwards. And as Ryan correctly pointed out, that can score goals.
Yeah.
So, can you imagine Michael Rasmussen as a third-line winger permanently? Can you imagine Andrew Copp as a third-line center? Can you imagine a NHL full-time third line of, let's say, Rasmussen, Copp, and Fabbri? Because realistically, that's what this team should look like.
Yeah, that gets me excited.
Yeah.
And then you've got a fourth line of, Veleno, potentially Berggren, and who the hell?
Soderblom, maybe.
Yeah. The recipe there for this team to be very good is there. And most of these guys are doing a very good job of playing above their role. They're doing more than they probably should be asked to do. And again, that's just a product of, not winning the lottery, not, hitting any home runs in any trades in terms of, getting a Timo Meier or a Jacob Chikrin. I know he's a defenseman, but that level of player. So, the formula is there. The blueprint of how the Red Wings are going to be good is there, and the pieces they have, they can use to win a championship. It's just...
They just now have to find that giant grand piano that has to be lowered in by crane.
Yeah, it's frustrating how simple looking at the Red Wings is right now to get their path, because you know how insanely difficult that last part is.
Yep. Look what they had to pay for Andrew Copp. Like, look at the premium they had to pay for a player who is decidedly on a good season in Detroit's middle six.
But one crazy good offseason, not that this is going to happen, and both of these are long shots. I mean, every big trade is a long shot. But one offseason, Winnipeg decides to blow it up, and Steve Yzerman goes, that's it. We're doing everything. Kyle Connor, Alex DeBrincat, come on down. How different does this team look?
Oh, yeah.
Not just because you can, pencil Kyle Connor and Alex DeBrincat on the top line with Larkin, but now everybody is slotted a line below, which means their matchups get easier, which means their role is more suited to their skill set. Again, it's not going to happen realistically. Even one of those guys would be a game changer. But
you're right. The blueprint is there.
Yeah.
Let's get to goalies. This is going to be defined by Ville Husso. The Ned and the Hellberg conversations will be quick. Ville Husso's season was at points MVP level. I also think at points we saw the wear and tear and where Ville Husso fell off. Played 56 games. Wasn't, a stellar all-star throughout all of them, but for the start of the year, it was like, oh God, this guy's one of the best goalies in the division right now. Leveled off and normalized a little bit as you do behind the Red Wings defense. You can only keep that up for so long. But in general, I think for the first 2/3 of his games, for the most part, he was probably Detroit's second most important player, maybe third up there with Larkin and Seider. And then you saw him falter a little bit. It wasn't all just the defense. He didn't have as solid of games. He had, 4 or 5 goal stinkers. And especially towards the end of the year where he was battling injury and kind of decided to grind through it rather than shutting down, you really saw where he kind of fell off a cliff a little bit.
Yeah, you can't really sugarcoat the final third of that year. It was bad.
Yeah.
The team was bad in front of him. He was bad in the net, not bailing them out, not doing them any favors. Hopefully we can attribute that to 2 things. One, he obviously was battling some injuries, and obviously that's going to be way more amplified as a goalie versus a skater. And 2, he's never had a workload like this in his career. This is the first time he ever hit those numbers of games. So obviously there was going to be an adjustment period. Obviously there'd be a fatigue factor, and then you combine that with the injuries. Yeah, okay. It's not good, but it's very understandable why his season finished the way it did. But what we got from Ville Husso this year was the most important thing we needed from Ville Husso this year. We saw he's capable of it.
Mm-hmm.
We saw a very prolonged stretch of hockey where we were watching and go, yeah, Ville Husso can be a starter. Yeah, I can see a playoff run with Ville Husso when this team's better. Yeah, I can see Ville Husso being a super effective goalie if they have an adequate backup who can, make Ville Husso not have to play 82 games a year.
Yeah.
So we saw it. And it's goaltending. The endless joke is goalies are voodoo, so you never know what you're getting year over year. But we know. We know it's there. Now it's up to the Red Wings to find the formula that works around Husso to manage his games played, to manage what's happening in front of him, to hopefully set it up so we don't get a repeat of this year. And again, there's a lot of factors that go into that. I think a backup goalie that can, carry a 900 save percentage would be super important to that. But yeah, I'm not saying Husso's the guy of the future. But again, like we talked about the formula for the rest of the team, I see the path now to Husso being the guy, at least for a good chunk of years until we know what's going on with Kosa.
Yeah, I think for me, we sort of found the upper limit right now of the games and the amount of games Ville Husso can play in front of a bad team. I think maybe that'll change a little bit as the defensive core starts to round itself out. Team gets better, obviously, less time having to make saves and more time able to just sort of stand around. They also need a competent backup, and that will help alleviate some of the pressure that Ville Husso will feel as a starter. So, the counting stats aren't all that great, but he had 4 shutouts on a bad team, and he looks like he can be a starter for the Detroit Red Wings. So can't really, and at points he was the MVP of this team. So can't really be all that upset at the end of the day.
Yeah, for me, the ideal Ville Husso season where he's performing well is he's playing 50 games. A competent backup is playing 32. And of Detroit's backups, I mean, Alex Nedeljkovic lost the job at the start of the year. There's no other way around it. He was a guy who you watch and you're like, he has the talent, but is just in his own head. Was not. It wasn't like technical issues. He was letting goals through him where you could see he had like the yips.
And the team played completely different in front of him.
Way different
than Ville Husso.
Way different. You're absolutely right. The Red Wings had no other choice but to waive him. He obviously cleared state in Grand Rapids. When he came back, I think at the end of the season, he showed a little bit more than he did at the start of the year. Played a little bit better. I don't think he was enough to kind of change minds in upper management. His talent and his skill level isn't in question. It's that
consistency.
It's consistency, and that matters for every position across hockey. But in the NHL, if you don't know what version of the same goalie you're going to get any given night, that's not your guy. That's not your number 1 guy. It's not even your number 2 guy. If you want him to play 32 games, which in the modern NHL, you need at least that, I think.
A lot of teams are rocking almost a starting goalie as their backup now.
I wanted Ned to do so much more, and it was you can't argue with why the team chose what they did. That said, I don't think his career is done. I think if he can find his consistency, which isn't out of the question, then he can come in and absolutely make noise. Do I think that's with the Red Wings? I don't imagine so, but the only thing that would change that is if the backup goalie market is very thin and he agrees to come back on a very cheap deal. I would suspect that he probably wanted a trade around the deadline. So I don't know where his head's at on that. If you asked me 4 months ago, I'd say no, absolutely not. As of right now, I'd say probably not, but there's a chance. It just depends on the goalie market. And with Hellberg,
Vardy's a really good guy.
Great guy. And it's the same story, not in his path, but Hellberg is what he was, a waiver claim. That's how he performed. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I think the Red Wings need to do better than the Nedeljkovic they got last year, and they need to do better than Hellberg in net. Like, all 3 goalies under 900 save percentage, but Hellberg was the lowest of the 3. He came in and did the only thing you could expect of Hellberg, but the Red Wings have questions, and in my mind, I don't know how you both think, I don't think Hellberg or Nedeljkovic are either of the ideal answers.
No, I don't know any other way to put it. They need someone who's going to push Husso.
Yeah.
They have to. The only way a backup plays 30 games is if they're playing at or near the same level as the starter. If, because at one point Husso was putting up like a 915 and Nedeljkovic was putting up like a mid-80s.
Yeah.
You're not pushing anybody doing that.
Unless you have an absolute superstar as a starter, like a Vasilevsky or a John Gibson, you have to have a backup who can push your starter. Look at Ullmark and Swayman.
Oh, yeah.
Both of those guys are starting goalies, but they've got both of them.
Yeah.
The Red Wings need to maybe not get a Vasilevsky, but, I mean...
That'd be nice. Yeah, I'll take that.
Maybe.
They spent a first-round pick on one. They better get one.
No spoilers, but right now it's not looking all that good for this year, but for a Vasilevsky. But maybe it's 2 Ville Hussos. Yeah. I don't think anyone would be upset about that.
Man, I can't go from having the conversation of we need 2 Dylan Larkins to now we need 2 Ville Hussos.
We need 2 of everything.
You're welcome. I'm generating content.
The summary is Husso was good, but to get him at his best, the Red Wings need more behind him. Unfortunate that Ned season went how it did. Who knows if there's a surprise in the future, but right now I don't think either him or Hellberg are tracking to be the solution. And I don't know that I don't think management thinks so either. Speaking of administrative staff, Newsy, Derek Lalonde's first season as head coach of the Detroit Red Wings. overall, I think this is a team that, despite the falling off a cliff at the end of the year in terms of the standings, this is a team that improved in every way. And if you don't even look at the standings, how many more games this year did we see Detroit hang in there and fight and just not get absolutely caved where that wouldn't have been the case?
Maybe I'll play devil's advocate ever so slightly. Not that I agree with what I'm saying. Is that because of Derek Lalonde, or is that because they brought in more competent NHL players?
Oh, it is a very fair point. Like, I don't think it's necessarily fair to compare 1-to-1 Lalonde's first season and Blashill's last. Like, the personnel is not the same. Like, the Yzerman went out and spent on impactful free agents in the offseason. Take away Husso, Perron, Kubalik, this team is way higher up in the Bedard standings. Well, somewhat higher up in the Bedard standings, maybe. The bottom of the league really sucked. But in general, Derek Lalonde had this Red Wings team playing where they were legitimately fighting for a playoff spot at two different points in the year. And in the middle, it looked like they significantly fell out of it, and he got them back in it. It's hard to judge a coach based on 1 year, and it's hard to judge a coach when they don't have a full complement of competitive playoff level players. But in my mind, I'm impressed with his first season, especially because his priorities were on defense and team defense.
That's the thing for me. The mandate last offseason was clear as can be. This team needs to really lock it down defensively. They need to stop giving up so many goals. They need to stop melting down. Everything that you could fix on defense, the Red Wings needed to fix. And, Mo Seider was great. And obviously we knew he was going to and continue to be great. But this defense group, wasn't billed as a top-end defensive group going in. And he had them cruising along in the top half of the NHL for most of the season. We saw a breakout year from Filip Zadina. We saw a breakout year from Jake Wallman. How much of that is the players just progressing? How much of that is the coaching staff helping them along? Probably both. So, obviously the coaching staff deserves some credit for that. Didn't come without faults, especially towards the end of the year. We started seeing a few more of those meltdowns that we saw last year, but they weren't happening throughout the season, which was important. So he was given a task, fix the defense. And I will say he did that. And now that's only going to improve as that defense group gets more talented.
And credit to Bob Boughner on that front as well.
Yeah, of course. The whole coaching staff gets credit for that for the most part. So now his mandate for this upcoming season is clear as can be. All right, you know how to play defense now. Make this team score. So if we can see an uptick in offense and they can maintain that level of defense that they found this year and hopefully maybe even improve on it, we're walking away, over the moon with his performance in the first two seasons. But you can't do half the job and be billed as the savior. I will say he was great in what he was asked to do this year. Now he needs to build off of that.
And it sounds like that's what they are refocusing on. Like Steve Yzerman said, and Derek Lalonde said in his end-of-year pressers as well, I believe, like they really need to find those goals. And if you look at the Red Wings roster at the end of last year, no one was looking at that roster and saying, yeah, we're going to flip that to be a playoff team absolutely next season. It just isn't attainable. Brad said earlier this episode, the steps you need to take are so low percentage in terms of the probability of them happening. All the steps that needed to happen, like the 5 or 6 of them, it just wasn't going to come about. So your only real choice is to iterate. Also, he was tasked with coming in and building a winning culture. Having good players does not mean you are going to win. I know that sounds stupid, but hockey is such a mental game. It's a game that's dominated by kids who are like young kids who are like, the most impactful players in the league are sometimes between 21 and 26 years old. Consistency, mental focus, the ability to persevere through like the absolute lowest of lows, that's what brings out Stanley Cup champions. And you don't get there overnight. So not only was he tasked with the very identifiable, tangible, like team defense, possession, forwards getting back, being greater than the sum of your parts in terms of your actual defensive core, but it's also teaching the team how to win, how to be a winning team, how to mesh together as a group, finding that chemistry. And in all, it seems like they have more of an identity now than they have, I think, since the previous generation of the Red Wings. So, and like you said, Brad, that's the entire coaching staff, but credit to Derek Lalonde. There's small stories like Bob Boughner and what he was able to do with Phil Perron. I think Special teams is improved overall. The inconsistency is still there a little too much for me when you look at, what Alex Tanguay has done on the power play. At times you're like, yeah, this power play is way substantially better than it used to be. But also,
still a long way to go.
Yeah, also at times I found that like they would just have no movement and they would all be like cementing their feet and everything would break down. It's like you were just doing it last game. What happened? But the disruption as well in personnel too, like no Vrana. Bertuzzi wasn't there and then was traded. I understand, but special teams consistency for me needs to really step up, although the PK was excellent. I think, relatively speaking, the PK was much improved. But overall, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Brad. Did really well, did what was asked of him, Derek Lalonde. This isn't like a miracle overnight. It all is within reason, but now the next step has to come, and it really is a focus on offense.
At the very least, the press conferences were actually insightful, educational, and honest. How many Jeff Blashill, not to kick someone who's out the door, but how many interviews did Jeff Blashill do that just made your eyes roll into the back of your head?
Well, you know what? I would actually say Lalonde is the exception. Blashill's like most other coaches, and Lalonde is just that's why he's doing so well in the Sportsnet panel.
Oh, this was going to be my segue into the next part.
And I stole it?
You stole it. And yeah.
Go ahead. No, go do it.
No, I'm done. You've ruined it. You've ruined it all. The magic's gone.
As I usually do. But yeah, on the Sportsnet panel, I loved Derek Lalonde breaking down, Andrei Vasilevsky, when he was in Tampa Bay, they did a study and found that he was among the worst goalies in the league at tracking the puck, like point shots coming in from the blue line, just really struggled with that. And they restructured their team's defense to...
Sheldon Keefe saw that and was like, my God.
And one incredible insight. We talked about it last episode, I think, but when he's not in a coaching situation, when he's just an analyst, but he still has all the knowledge of a coach, especially about the team he's talking about, like that is the best stuff you can get in terms of actual, like meaty, something you can sink your teeth into insight. Amazing for the viewer. Jon Cooper didn't love it. Like the rebuttal was very gentle, but I think he absolutely had a rebuttal where he mentioned that, he was an assistant coach in Tampa Bay. He's there because he was an assistant coach with Tampa Bay, so he's trying to offer insight and trying to give fans something, and he should be doing that. He's just got to make sure it's accurate. And to me,
wow, that's kind of a woof.
It's a little spicy. It's a little cold.
You don't think any other team in the league knew anything about this?
That's the thing. It's not a secret, right?
These aren't state secrets. He didn't steal a dossier from North Korea. Like, everybody knows this.
Teams have watched tape, did watch tape. I'm sure they all know it about Vasilevsky.
Toronto's defense has been shooting from the point more than I think I've ever seen them do it. It's not because Derek Lalonde sent them a wire and said, hey, I know this thing that no one else knows.
But it's a good demonstration of what we talked about last episode. This is why, if you're wondering why coaches don't open up a lot, like Newsy opens up more than most other coaches in the league, and even he is pretty reserved when he's in the Red Wings coaching capacity. This is why, like, Jon Cooper doesn't love that. His team is 3-1 down, and there's...
So be better.
Yeah, well, that's my answer, too.
Going back to the whole poopy pants, this is a big boy league.
Yeah.
Just stop being bad.
Anyways.
Stop blowing 4-1 leads.
I'm
talking about Tampa.
Well, hold on. Actually, 4-1 with 10 minutes left was rough, but do we know for sure that Toronto's going to close this out? I picked them in 6, but...
I'm not saying anything.
No.
I'm not saying anything. It's either the greatest hurdle the organization has ever overcome or the greatest collapse. It's nothing in between.
Anyhow, I hope panels continue to pull in the trend of finding former coaches from teams, because the insights they offer are excellent. Very quick updates here before overtime. Playoff series at time of recording. Avalanche and Kraken are tied 2-2. Dallas is up 3-2 over Minnesota. Vegas is up 3-1 over Winnipeg. Oilers are up 3-2 over LA. Boston up 3-1 over Florida. That game is being played right now, and Florida's up 1-0. Toronto came back from 4-1 down with 10 minutes left to make it 3-1 over Tampa Bay, who collapsed beautifully. Carolina up 3-2 over the Islanders, and in the Battle of the Hudson, the Rangers and Devils are tied 2-2 as the Devils have come alive. And it was also announced today, as we were talking about at the top of the show, that the Red Wings are among 4 teams going to Europe. The Global Series in Sweden will be played next season in November. 4 games are going to happen. The Red Wings are going to be playing on Thursday, November 16th in Stockholm against Ottawa, and again on the 17th, the Friday, against Toronto. The other team is Minnesota. So exciting for obviously Swedish fans who don't get to see the Red Wings up close and personal, and hey, maybe for us if we go.
Absolute no-brainer by the NHL to include the Red Wings.
Oh, yeah.
Why they put Dylan Larkin on the front of a Swedish event is beyond me, but
so
very
funny.
on brand.
Yeah.
I mean, Lucas Raymond was right.
It was literally right there.
Or they could have just done Leo Carlsson, and then he's automatically sent to the Red Wings. I would have taken that too. Okay, we're going to jump into a very quick overtime here. Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast if you want to get access to the Discord, the bonus episodes, the giveaways, and support this show, support our expanded Winged Wheel Podcast content network, including Expected by Whom, and so much more. Thank you to all of our patrons. Some questions. Woodson2 says, this is probably for Brad, but what is the go-to stick for NHL players right now? I played back when if you didn't have synergy, you didn't have the stick.
That is true.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I love
You were a nobody if you didn't have a synergy.
I think I used my first OG synergy for like 4 years.
Is that supposed to be a long time? I used sticks for like half a decade, at minimum.
Ryan,
That is a long time.
I'm happy if I get 4 months out of a stick.
Yeah, you're breaking sticks like. Anyways, go.
Anyways, it's hard to say because there's so many different top end sticks out there that are viable for NHL players. And the other thing with NHL players that's sneaky is a lot of the sticks are wrapped based on what their sponsor manufacturer is trying to advertise. For example, Mo Sider and Lucas Raymond are using Bauer Agents right now. You would think Lucas Raymond's is still a Flylight. Mo Sider's is a Hyperlight build. The Bauer Vapor Hyperlight seems to be the most popular line in the NHL right now. That's actually coming up near the end of its life cycle. The Hyperlight 2 is coming out this summer, so I'm curious to see how many guys will make the immediate jump to that. The Bauer Sync is very popular. CCM Jetspeed FT5 Pro, very, very popular. A lot of Warrior Pros in the NHL. Seeing a lot of guys switch it over to the Novium. Perron switched over to the Novium near the end of the year, which is notable because the stick Perron was using up to that point was like 8 years old. So, he...
My people.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, generally the Hyperlight and the FT5 Pro, if I had to pick 2 from different manufacturers that I see most prominently, would be the 2. And I use the Hyperlights myself, so I can attest they rock.
Weeb Wheel Podcast says, who are the top 3 teams/GMs that Steve Yzerman should be targeting to exploit for a trade for either a top-line scorer or top 2 center, assuming the age fits?
Arizona, Vancouver, Winnipeg.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. There are other GMs that you should be calling a lot, but Winnipeg for the stock and Vancouver because they kind of just do weird stuff all the time.
And Arizona because it feels like they're always selling everybody.
Yeah. Jeremy Dahl said, Brad said a while ago during one of our many season woes that almost no one on this team would make a Stanley Cup team. Has that opinion changed, say, in a few years when we are really competing for the Cup? Who do you still see prominent roles on the team out of the players in our system right now?
In the role they're playing now, yeah, very, very few. Like I talked about earlier in the episode, everybody needs to be bumped down a line realistically.
Yeah.
Larkin, you can win a Cup as a top line C as long as you have a really good 2C. I could see a world where Raymond is his right winger on that line, but you would need Kyle Connor or something like that opposite them. Sider, number 1D, Wallman as his partner, no-brainer. That can absolutely be a top pair to win you a Cup. I think beyond those guys, everybody would have to be bumped down from the role they're playing currently on the Red Wings. Understanding Perron on a second line makes sense, but by the time the Red Wings are competing, he's going to be like in his mid-40s. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Joseph Barry says, if you had a choice of getting one of these 3, who are you taking? Gensel, Connor, or DeBrincat?
I want to say Connor immediately, but I feel like DeBrincat's 2 years younger.
Yeah, I believe 24 versus 26.
Yeah.
I'll take who's ever the youngest out of that group.
I would go to DeBrincat just because of the age, even though I think Connor is a better player.
Sorry, DeBrincat is late 97, so he's 25. And Kyle Connor is a year earlier, almost exactly a year earlier, so 26. So only 1 year difference.
Then I would go Kyle Connor.
I'm going to say Connor too.
Yeah, I think I would too. I just like the way he plays a little bit more. They both score a lot of goals. I think it's a little bit in that nuance that I choose Connor.
All right. That wraps it up. Our season in review series is essentially done. We are going to take some time next episode to look back at our predictions and see who was the closest in terms of predicted standings. But thank you all so much for tuning.
Why would we even bother?
Because we know.
Spoiler alert.
Pretty much.
What division are you talking about? Because I feel like I nailed the Central.
Brad and I are fighting for second place behind Lobsterdamus over here.
If we look at the other divisions, that's what I'm really curious about.
Yeah.
Some more to come.
But thank you for tuning into the 2022-2023 Detroit Red Wings season in review series. Shorter overtime today, but the bonus episode will be longer because of it. Thank you all so much for tuning in. All of our listeners are new and old. We really, really appreciate it. Manscaped, the sponsors of this episode, as well as all of our patrons, including our name level supporters. Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, Bertuzzi is straight up missing, Nick Perks, Icon, We Are Geelong, the greatest team of all, Glenn Brabham, Aidan White, Keenan O'Donohue, Yanni Burgers, Meals on Wheels, Matthew M. Rice, Croner's Left Knee, Admiral Matt S. of the Cheesebag Navy, Babe Landeskog, Bros Before Hosas, Carl Brutanen and Aluski, Chimmy, Chris P., Citizen High Five, Connor Scovey, Coyote Season Tickets in Tempe, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, DJ Denton, Give Blood, Fight Probert, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Joel Miranda, Kalen Wood, Kevin James, King Tone, Las Ensaladas Picantes, Marcus, Matt McKay, Michael Edlund, Nicholas Fritz, R.A., Red 3, Ryan Hubbard, Ryan, the Ryan Hannah, Ryan, somewhat offended, self-identified dummy of industry, Hannah, thank you, Arjun, Scott Martin, Send It Seawolf, Shahid Syed, Scree and Lube, That's What I Appreciates About You, Wallman's Elite Dancing D, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, Sam Bankson, #1 Detroit Red Guys fan, A. Ron, Adam Gowitzka, Adam Rose, Brad Simmons, Brian Vasha, Captain Antonio Gracias of the United Federation of Cheesebags, CJ Wilkinson, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Leighton, Corey Prida, Darren Fick, Evans Shortgorm Goals, Evans 2018 Kitchener Road Puddles, Frank Stanley, Grand Rapids Hockey Guy, Griffey Boy, Instructions Unclear, Cheesebag No Longer Fresh, James Laporte, Jeremiah Dobo, JM Rhapsody, John Evans, John Engels, Jordan Pierbolt, brand new name level sponsor. Welcome, Jordan. Josh Yelton, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Linda Hull, Matt Keeler, Maximilian, Melissa Erickson, Ophelia, Reed, Steven, Tatar Sauce, the Hodag. Thank you all so very much. We'll be with you on Sunday.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hannah WWP, and at Hockeytown Evan.